Good morning, everybody. I am glad to see so many organizations participating. My name is Purette Dagg. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing at Merit, and I'm also a PhD student in Education Technology at the University of Toledo. Today, we're all here to talk about the Broadband Internet Survey Project, which is being run by the Ottawa County Data Collection Steering Committee, and it's a part of Ottawa County's digital inclusion strategy. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that from Paul and Doug in a moment. But first, I want to make sure and give us all just a little bit of an overview of some of the things we'll be covering today. At first, we'll talk about the steering committee. This will be Paul and Doug, and they're going to give us an overview of the steering committee, the county's digital inclusion strategy, a little bit of an overview of what we're trying to do, and some of the goals of the survey project. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about my organization, Merit Network, and the Michigan Moonshot, and what we're doing to help bridge the digital divide in the state of Michigan. We're going to talk a little bit about the survey that we're conducting, and we're asking your help for. We'll want to make sure everybody understands why it's so critical to collect accurate and granular information, so that way we can move our county forward in connectivity. We'll talk a little bit about the goals. So what are we actually hoping to discover or find out from conducting this survey and speed test? Then I'll give a little bit of an overview of the actual data collection process and the timeline that we'll be working with. And then we'll talk briefly about what your specific community anchor institution and our community champions can do to assist the county. Because all of what we're trying to do really is counting on everybody in our community to helping us get the word out. And our community anchor institutions are in the perfect position to do that. Following that, Paul and Doug are going to do a little bit of community Q&A. So if anybody has a question now or as the presentation continues, you can feel free to type it into the chat box, and we'll make sure that Paul, Doug, or myself answers it before the end of the call. And then Paul and Doug will also give us an idea of what comes next after the call that we have today. So again, I want to introduce, after we get through some of this initial housekeeping, I'll introduce Doug Weber. He's the president of Urban Wireless Solutions, and Paul Sachs, who is the director of Ottawa County Planning and Performance Improvement. Paul and Doug, do you want to give us just a little bit of introduction, history, and the overview of what we're trying to do today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Purette. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're thrilled to launch this important first stage of the county's multi-phase digital inclusion strategy. I'd like to first take a moment to recognize several individuals that have been working steadily with us to pull this together. And that would be the Data Collection Steering Committee that Purette mentioned. And these individuals have taken significant time to get us where we are today with the impending launch of this comprehensive strategy. And these individuals are Mike Rower. He's the Chief Information Officer and Assistant Superintendent of the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District. We also have Pete Hofswell, Superintendent of Broadband Services with Holland Board of Public Works. Jim Brooks, he's a business leader and regional strategist. John Nash, Supervisor, Spring Lake Township. Helen Dietrich, she's the owner of Ridgeview Orchards and the Chester Township Clerk. Rick Gajewski, tech expert and resident advocate from Talmadge Township. Becca Edema, she's virtual health manager with Spectrum Health. Erin Yor van Oosterhout, who is research manager for GVSU's Johnson Center of Philanthropy. Jeff Williams, he's the Director of Community Data and Research Lab at GVSU's Johnson Center. Also, Vicki Thalen, Director of Data and Analytics with GVSU's Information Technology Department. And we also have Mandy Cooper. She's the Director of Strategic Innovations or Initiatives with Lakeshore Advantage. And also, we've been receiving support from Jennifer Owens with Lakeshore Advantage. And then we have several technical consultants supporting the county in this effort that I'd like to recognize. So as Purette mentioned, we have Doug Weber, President of Urban Wireless Solutions. And we also are working with his colleagues at KLA Laboratories, Doug Kwiatkowski, Director of Operations and Innovation, and Steve Gerhardt, another tech consultant. If I may, I would also like to recognize our funding partners for this effort. This is a large-scale community project that requires full involvement by all stakeholders, and we're very thankful to have the support, funding support from the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation, Grand Haven Township, Holland City, Holland Township, Hudsonville City, Lakeshore Advantage, Loudoun District Library, the Intermediate School District, Ottawa County Farm Bureau, Patmos Library, Polkton Township, Robinson Township, Spectrum Health, West Coast Chamber of Commerce, West Michigan Lakeshore Association of Realtors, Zeeland Board of Public Works, and Zeeland City. So thank you for letting me recognize all of these individuals and entities that are working with us today to launch this effort. So some background, we've been talking about broadband for many years at the county, and there's a bit of history behind what we're doing. And from our perspective at the county level, and even the perspective of the steering committee, it should not matter whether you live in a city or on a farm or in a new subdivision or older neighborhood. The access to the internet is an essential utility for everyone. And while we have known that access to reliable, affordable, adequate internet is not universally available across the county, the pandemic that we've experienced definitely highlighted the unacceptable inequities that still exist in our communities today. The county, we've previously participated in a handful of state-sponsored programs over the last 10 to 15 years that were each designed to help bridge the digital divide. Unfortunately, each of those efforts, they never resulted in real change in our infrastructure landscape. Internet service providers, speaking honestly, they still cherry pick where they deliver service, and that's really often based on their ability to achieve a return on investment. And that's typically delivering services in areas that have more housing densification. And honestly, I can't fault them for that as private businesses. However, at this point in our history and living in the digital age, those traditional business models are really no longer acceptable. It may sound strong, but we can no longer be left at the mercy of providers to expand the services as they deem fit, or to wait for state or federal government efforts to make real positive momentum in this space. And really what we're embarking on today with data collection can help to accelerate the work that needs to be done, especially with the American Rescue Plan dollars that are coming to communities for broadband. We can use this information to strategically plan for what we need to do. And this is an infrastructure issue that it needs to be addressed now, and we're committed to doing so in collaboration with our partners and the private sector. And this is why we created that robust multi-phase digital inclusion strategy. And I'd like to specifically call out Mike Rower, Assistant Superintendent of the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District. As soon as the stay-home order hit last year, Mike and I developed the strategy framework, and we felt the impacts of the pandemic that rocked everyone's world, and knew that this needed to move forward. We had to make real change. And the strategy that we have developed, I might add, it is getting significant interest across the state from a very pragmatic, methodical approach to addressing our broadband inequities. And it begins with this thorough data collection. And it's, Perrette will touch on this, but the state and federal programs and reporting by ISPs, they woefully overestimate what's available in our communities. And for us to plan what we need to do, we need the data from the residents. And we also are looking at it not from just accessibility. This is an affordability issue as well, to understand where those challenges are. Also, to understand the digital literacy needs of our population. So as Merritt points out, it's access to reliable, high-speed internet in general that impedes the ability for residents, students, seniors, and employees and all others to competently compete in the digital economy. And the digital economy and our living in it, it will only intensify into the future. So this data that we're collecting is so incredibly important. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Doug Weber, who's serving as the county's technical consultant on launching this effort. And Doug will share a little bit of background as to how we partnered with Merit Network Incorporated. So thank you very much. Doug.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everybody. As Paul very expertly laid out, we are going through a very methodical, what we think logical process to improve the broadband situation throughout Ottawa County. Obviously, with that goal in mind, we're not unique. A lot of communities around the country are undertaking the same type of thing. However, we've been at this for over a year now, and Paul and I have worked together on other projects to really discuss this. But as he mentioned, the pandemic has really brought this into the spotlight and brought into the spotlight the need to make something happen in a somewhat expeditious manner. With that in mind, we looked at past activities that the county had undertaken to gather data. As Paul mentioned, state-sponsored surveys and such, which rely quite heavily on FCC data and other data that's really proven to not be very reliable, really dependent upon the ISPs providing information to the FCC and that sort of thing. Knowing that, we realized that to get a good handle on what the needs are of the county and how we need to go about doing this, we needed good, reliable, succinct data at a more granular level than what the FCC has been able to provide so far. This is arguably the most important step of the digital inclusion strategy, because from this, your feasibilities, your engineering plans, and potential financing methods can be determined from the results of this data collection. So this really is going to drive the bus for the rest of the strategy and the rest of the overall project. Knowing this, we sought out to partner with people that are expert in survey methods and data collection. Excuse me. I'm sorry. We knew of Merit and what they've done in the past in Washtenaw County and other places around the state. We also met with other consultants such as the Johnson Center at Grand Valley State University, the folks at Calvin University, the University of Michigan, and other entities as well. After those initial conversations, we put out an RFP, a fairly comprehensive RFP, we felt, to solicit proposals from experts around the country to come in and help us with this very important step of data collection. We received about 10 proposals. Some were very good, some were not very good, to be quite frank. At the end of the day, after meeting with the data collection steering committee and Paul and many conversations, it was just clear that Merit was the one that had the best background, the best methods in mind, and the best understanding of what we were trying to accomplish to make this happen as quickly and get this project really kicked off. That was how we arrived at choosing Merit for this project. To date, we have not been disappointed in what they provided. I think you'll find today that the materials they're presenting and how they're going to drive this data collection will be more than beneficial. And when this portion of the project comes to an end in the early fall, we will have a very solid, reliable working document from which to develop the rest of the digital inclusion strategy for Ottawa County. We're happy to be working with Merit, and they've been a great partner thus far. And I should add also that even out of the RFP, the folks at the Johnson Center, even though they weren't the chosen one to conduct this data collection for us, they've been more than willing to support the project and have become a member of the data collection steering committee. So their expertise and local knowledge of the area has not gone unnoticed and are now becoming a very important part of this committee. With that said, I think I will turn it over to Corrette and let her tell us about what the next steps are in this project.
Thank you so much, Paul and Doug. Just to give you a little bit of a background about Merit and the Michigan Moonshot. Merit is the longest running research and education network in the United States. We were founded in 1966, and we own and operate more than 4,000 miles of fiber optic infrastructure in the state of Michigan. We're also owned and governed by 12 of the 13 public universities in Michigan, and we were founded with research and educational missions in our core, and we continue that mission today by providing network security and community services to the other community anchors and nonprofit institutions throughout the state of Michigan. And the Michigan Moonshot we formed a few years ago, and the goal here really is to be the catalyst to help organizations such as Ottawa County, the Digital Inclusion Strategy, and our community anchors bridge the digital divide in Michigan. And we do that through multiple efforts that you can learn a little bit more about if you're interested at merit.edu/moonshot. Many of them are similar to what it is we're doing today. We have done a number of these data collection studies in the last year. So again, for more information, you can view those at michiganmoonshot.org or merit.edu/moonshot. And just to give you an idea of some of the data collection projects we've undertaken, I'll give you an overview. And on that website, if you're curious to see the state of broadband or the executive summaries for any of these other data collection initiatives, we do have those posted as well. So essentially what we're aiming to do here is to provide accurate, granular connectivity and resident sentiment data that can be leveraged by municipalities, community governments, and people who are working to expand broadband to help inform their planning efforts and provide first level information for feasibility. So I want to just set a baseline here. When I say accurate, granular connectivity maps, Paul and Doug did allude to some of the challenges with FCC Form 477 data, and I'll show you a little bit later on a map that demonstrates that. Essentially, with the Federal Communications Commission, they rely on carrier self-reported data to highlight who does or does not have access to broadband infrastructure. And not only is this data carrier self-reported, it's also reported on a census block level. So what that means is if one household within an entire census block is covered or is intended to be covered with broadband access in the next handful of years, then they're counted as served. And sometimes we're seeing that access to federal and state and even sometimes more regional funding sources can be blocked because of Form 477 reporting as covered. In addition to that, even understanding if there are some who have access and some who don't within the county, the more data and the more information that our steering committee has to help inform their broadband infrastructure planning, the more likely we are to be able to get coverage to more people or everyone that needs it. The sentiment data that we're collecting will provide information such as satisfaction with internet service for those who have it. We're running a speed test, so we know that of those who are served, what speeds are they connected at? Would residents be willing to sign up if they had it? What price sensitivities might they have? So this just gives us a more robust piece of information so we can couple access and non-access with speeds versus what people are paying for, with people's satisfaction, needs, and willingness to subscribe to service if it comes in. And that'll put the county in a very good position to start broadband planning in the near future. We've conducted a pilot study of K-12 schools within the state of Michigan for similar efforts. We also worked with Wayne State University to help understand the remote learning and teaching readiness of faculty, staff, and students within their entire ecosystem. And for community data collection projects, we've completed them in Washtenaw County, most recently in Berrien County, and now we are embarking on this journey with the Ottawa County Data Collection Steering Committee. So we mentioned a little bit, really the goals and desired outcomes of this survey are to quantify the availability versus the demand of broadband internet service, to produce unbiased, granular, and accurate household maps and visualizations for all of our residents, and to create these maps to help inform infrastructure investments, potentially challenge some of these mappings for Form 477, and to just put us in a better place to move forward. So I want to talk just briefly about our survey methodology. We understand that there are very likely served and unserved populations within Ottawa County. We also have a strong contingency of Spanish speakers. We have some who may be familiar with technology and may be digitally literate and digitally familiar, and we may have some that aren't. So essentially what we've done here is the methodology that we have is we've got an independent database that's been prepared of our community partner organizations such as yourself, our municipalities, some other nonprofits who are going to assist, community anchor institutions. And through them, we're going to launch the marketing and communications outreach pieces, which we'll talk about momentarily. Those are essentially tools, a toolkit that we're creating for all of our partners to help spread the word about the importance of this survey. From there are a number of methodologies that individual residents can conduct the survey. So what we've done is we have developed 3 survey mechanisms in both English and Spanish for people to participate. The first one of those is an online survey for people who do have broadband internet access. And essentially what this is anyone who has internet directly to their home, if you can pick up your internet and take it with you to the park, or if you can pick up your internet and take it with you to the car or wherever you might go, that's not really a fixed internet service. So anyone that has stationary internet, such as a fiber to their home, would hop online and they would take part in our survey just on the internet, and then they would complete a speed test. And all of those are fairly self-explanatory, and we'll be sending step-by-step directions just so everybody's aware, although it's very user-friendly. We will provide a video a little bit closer to our launch date. We also have a survey, which is a much lighter weight web accessible survey for those who do not have fixed internet. So for example, if you're operating off a hotspot or a Wi-Fi puck, or perhaps you tether to your cell phone and use 5G, this is just simply where you would navigate to a web page via one of your devices, and you would conduct the survey there. And then we're also almost ready to launch a text message survey. So for individuals who don't have web access on their cell phone, they'll simply be able to participate via text message by sending a text message number to they'll send survey to our text message number. They'll receive survey questions back via text, answer 1 for yes, 2 for no. So all of those methodologies in English and Spanish will help us ensure that survey participation and self-selection is open to all of our residents. Furthermore, our marketing and communications pieces, which I'll be talking about in just a moment, those are also going to be available in English and Spanish, and we are ensuring that all of those outreach pieces are available in digital mechanisms, and then also in mechanisms which will be able to target our unserved populations for those who don't participate in the digital ecosystem. So again, I want to stress here, this is where you will be seeing the survey when we are a few days away from our launch date, which our launch date is June 7th. So the first week of June, you'll be receiving an email packet. And in this email packet, it will have all of the information regarding the survey. It'll have step-by-step directions, and it'll direct everyone, if you have web service or not, to go to michiganmoonshot.org/Ottawa. And then it will also have the text message number. So when you do receive this email packet, we'll be following up this week with a recording of this video and just a few reminders. And then the first week of June, you'll receive an email packet. And in that, you'll essentially have a press release. You'll have language to use if you have print or digital newsletters. We'll have some flyers that you can email out, or that you could print out and post, or that you could hand out. There'll be some postcards that you can use. There'll be some digital postcards. We'll have social media images. We'll have social media languages and posting, all sorts of different methodologies that you can use as you interact with your communities to help spread the word. And you'll be able to pick and choose over the course of the summer what you use and what you don't use. And we will be sending additional materials as the summer continues, because data collection will go throughout Labor Day. So you'll probably receive a number of communications from us. And then certainly there'll be a spot in those emails that come by if you have other community anchor institutions or broadband champions that also want to assist us in getting out the word. You can just forward them our email, or you can send their email address to us, and we'll ensure that they're not only included in some of these outreach efforts, but also that we're sending updates to all of our partners, so we all know where we stand and where we may or may not need to focus extra efforts. As the survey continues, we will be monitoring the response rate, so we'll know where we need to push and where we won't. Going on to this, before I talk about the broadband density per census block, this is just one example of a map and why our partners are so important. I also want to talk just briefly, because we've been talking about sharing information, people participating in surveys. So I do want to just address the data security portion of this. And if anybody has any questions about that, you can certainly contact me as well. So all of the methodology that we're using today, not only the surveys and the speed tests and the sentiment analysis, but also the actual data analysis, the executive summaries, and the maps that we're producing, they have all been developed under Michigan State University Institutional Review Board protocol. So the Institutional Review Board is a group of individuals. It's essentially an oversight committee at every research university that ensures participant privacy and participant data security and PII, personally identifiable information, anonymity, as we go through all of these projects. So if any of those questions do come up, or if you do have any questions about such, our partners at the Quello Center at MSU developed the methodology for all of these outreach vehicles and all of our survey interpretation in partnership with the Michigan Moonshot, and it has been reviewed and approved by their IRB. Any of the information that we're collecting as far as the survey or sentiment analysis is not in any way connected to other personally identifiable information for any of our residents. This is one example, as Paul and Doug mentioned, before I hand it back to them, about why it is so absolutely critical that we have the help and support from all of our outreach partners that are joining today, and any others you may know. We need as many people as possible to help us spread the word about the survey and to conduct the survey, and any way you can to reach out to your communities or organizations to just encourage awareness of the survey. Because as Paul and Doug mentioned, this is one example. This particular example has been drawn from Washtenaw County. So what you can see here in these two maps, and you can read them for yourself. But for example, in the map on the left here, this is FCC coverage. So this is what the FCC says is covered. The white areas on the left map indicate that at least one person within the area one person in the area has broadband, because they're essentially saying these are covered, and that's the left side. On the right, you can see there's a stark difference. So we have many more parcels and census blocks in Washtenaw County where there are unserved residents than the FCC counts as covered. And if you remembered, if one household within the FCC census block has coverage, it's counted as covered. You can also see the same map on the right. So the difference between the left and the right, the map on the left indicates served or unserved, and the map on the right indicates as served. Essentially what this boils down to is in Washtenaw, we saw a 61% differential between what the FCC was saying has broadband internet service versus the reality of our survey respondents. In Berrien County, we also saw a similar number, and as other communities have begun data collection, this stark contrast of a minimum of 50% difference between who actually has access within a county versus what the common understanding of who has access are, that's pretty much across the board from what we have found so far. So it is entirely possible and hypothesized within your county that there will be a stark difference between people who are assumed to have broadband internet access and people who don't. And I certainly don't need to tell anybody on this call today, some of the reasons why, and Paul and Doug can also help talk about this a little bit, but we have seen statistics and studies from many research universities that indicate property values can grow with broadband internet access. It is, you generally in schools have higher GPAs, generally by about a half a letter grade. Students with home broadband and internet access tend to do better on SATs and PSATs. In some communities, instances of crime and violent crime have gone down. Agriculture yields, those generally increase by more than 6%. You certainly also have all of the impacts of remote work, as Paul alluded to in the beginning, telemedicine applications, democratic and civic participation are always demonstrated to increase with broadband internet access. And I'm sure there are a whole host of other ways. So understanding who does and doesn't have broadband internet service, so that way we can ensure that we are getting as many residents connected as possible as the county continues down this path is critical. And your help is the only way that we're going to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Paul and Doug to talk about what comes next, and then maybe I can facilitate some Q&A if anyone happens to have any questions. And if you do, you can either enter those into the chat or you can email any of us directly with the follow-up emails that'll come.
Thank you, Pierrette, and thank you again to everyone that's participating on the call this morning. And also thank you in advance to those that have reached out and said they couldn't make the call today, but they're looking forward to observing the recorded video and supporting this effort. It's been mentioned multiple times by Pierrette and Doug and myself that community partners are so big in this effort to get the survey materials out to the public. At this point in time, I mentioned we've gone through other state programs to dial in our broadband, and they just haven't worked. And which is why we're doing this ourselves, creating our own strategy, partnering with Merit to drill this in. So up to this point, it's mainly anecdotal. What we're hearing from the public, especially accelerated since the pandemic, there's so much concern and issues with lack of adequate access and affordability. And again, that's why we're calling this a digital inclusion strategy, because we're building the digital literacy skills amongst our population as well. So these data that we're going to be launching, the survey will launch, as Pierrette mentioned, on June 7th. It will go through September 17th. So there's multiple waves of opportunities for the public to respond and complete the survey. Right here at the start of summer, kids getting out of school. We'll capture a lot of people through those summer months, and then another big kick. We're anticipating when school's back in session and more people are back from vacations and doing some other items. So that's why we're really extending this out. these data, they will inform our decision making. Pierrette mentioned our planning. That's phase 2 of our digital inclusion strategy, and that's the development of a solutions deployment plan, which will look at the pre-engineering, or look at cost factors, or look at programming opportunities for affordability, working with nonprofits and libraries and others on digital literacy training needs that we could start to develop based on these data. So Doug with Urban Wireless Solutions and his colleagues at KLA Labs, they will be focused in on the engineering components of this. And I anticipate that solutions deployment plan will be probably completed around sometime around the similar time next year, which aligns really well with us for our planning, especially in receipt of the ARPA dollars coming from the federal government. We can have a very well-informed, pragmatic plan to make effective change for broadband internet. And I'll reiterate, we anticipate this occurring in collaboration with the private sector. We know, for one, reaching our rural areas with access, there's ROI challenges, and we've collaborated with the public sector previously on building wireless communication towers across the county. It helps to subsidize those costs. We view this as a public-private partnership moving forward, and that is going to be critical for us to make the best use of our resources and be most cost-effective, make positive impact for the future of our residents. Universal, affordable, and reliable broadband access for all is what we're striving for. And I appreciate everyone being a partner in this effort moving forward.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Paul. Paul's pretty well laid out what next steps are. One thing I want to point out, this process is by no means a linear process. And by that, I mean, we're not doing everything in step by step. There's many aspects to the data collection and next steps that are going on in parallel. Someone just asked the question about the survey, and I was just typing an answer out about if the survey will ascertain who the incumbent providers are in the area. That in itself is not the intent of the survey itself. However, behind the scenes, we are doing research to find out who all has assets within the county, and who is truly interested in partnering with the county to develop a comprehensive broadband strategy and coverage throughout the county. So that work is ongoing as well. Also, even though the data collection will ultimately drive the design and engineering and feasibility of the end result, there's already planning in process and development in process to determine what is the best model to pursue for the county. Myself and my colleagues are researching similar projects throughout the county to see what has worked and what hasn't worked. We have some ideas already as to what we think will be conducive for Ottawa County, but again, we need the survey data to see if our hypotheses are truly workable. So there's a lot that goes on within the survey and behind the survey. It's not linear. We're already thinking about methods of financing this project. As Paul has mentioned, we know that ARPA dollars will be coming into play. Whether that can fund an entire project or not, we're not sure, because we don't know exactly how that's going to look yet. The federal government still seems to be determining how they're going to dole out the money. We need to determine what the feeling is about the various ISPs and fiber companies, what their willingness is to participate in such a project, just a whole myriad of things. And then there's things that we have to determine also within the county to prevent barriers from being erected to making this happen as quickly as possible. As many of you know, or have ever tried to build a building or pull a permit or gain an approval for something somewhere within your jurisdiction, many times there's a process that you have to go through to get that permit or to gain that approval. And sometimes it's not the most smooth and easy process to get through, no matter how large or small your project is. So we need to undertake talking with our community partners how we minimize those roadblocks to prevent significant delays from happening when we're actually putting shovels in the ground, or before we're even putting shovels in the ground, to make sure that we have all the right processes in place and to make sure they can go smoothly and timely. Then, of course, the last kind of pitfall that we may be facing, hopefully it's not, but it's already being discussed across the country, is the availability of a labor force. Businesses all across the country are finding it difficult to find people to work because there's such a demand for services now coming out of the pandemic. And now with ARPA dollars coming forward, communities are going to really want to jump on projects, whether it's a broadband project, a water project, or whatever that may be, all creating increased demand for labor and services. So there's a lot of things that we have to get through in order to get to the end result. Again, I think that's where the legwork that Paul has championed, and I can't emphasize enough how fortunate Ottawa County is to have someone like Paul in place to champion a project like this. He's very forward thinking. He's always trying to think of ways to improve the services and such that the Ottawa County can provide, and the citizens of Ottawa County can be very, very pleased and very confident that Paul is in the position he is to lead these charges. But to get to where we ultimately need to get, again, I can't emphasize enough how important this step is. This will hopefully keep us ahead of the game, will help us get our plans in place and get to the work that's necessary more quickly, more financially smart, and achieve the end result of digital inclusion across Ottawa County. And with that, I guess we'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you so much. I don't see a ton coming in yet. Typically we did provide a lot of information in a very short period of time. So we'll probably see some of these coming in after the fact. I do want to remind everybody one more time before we close out. I put this in the chat. You'll get the communications and outreach packets along with the all of the instructions the first week of June. And our survey is running from June 7th through Labor Day. Doug's answering a few questions right now in the chat. And if anything comes up in the meantime, certainly feel free to respond to the email you'll get in the next couple of days with a link to this recording. Feel free to refer back to the recording if you have any questions. And you can also share the recording. If there are others in your community that you think might benefit from it, you could certainly share. I do see one question that came in, Paul and Doug, if you would like to address that. With Holland split between two counties, what difficulties does that present?
Paul, you might be better suited to answer that than me.
Yeah, the data itself can be analyzed across county boundaries. So I do not anticipate that to be an issue with our process and the strategy. I don't know if there's anything further you want to add to that, Pierrette?
Yeah, absolutely. As Paul mentioned, when we pull data, we're able to pull it any number of ways. So we can draw boundaries. We can do by county. We can do by township. We can do by parcel. We can do by census block. So it should be no problem to, if others accidentally take the survey, who may or may not be located in the county, that doesn't affect, or get pulled into the overall report outs that we do. Yeah, I do see a request for the slide presentation. We'll send the slides out along with the recording of the video, absolutely. Specifically will be included in the outreach materials. I'll go back to that slide since I see a question about that. These are still in development, so there will be English and Spanish versions. So you'll see a press release that you could share. There'll be an HTML email that you could forward. There will be a flyer that you could email or print, or you could print and hand out. You could post at your organization. There will be language that you could include on a newsletter, an e-newsletter, a flyer, a digital flyer, a message board, a community announcement page, anything like that. There'll be some images you can use. There'll be some social media posts. So there'll be a postcard or two, quite a large number of outreach materials that I also imagine will continue to grow over the summer months. All right, with that, Paul or Doug, do you have anything that you'd like to add to wrap us up?
I just want to thank everyone for their participation in this. Perrette has indicated to us that the number of people who signed up to listen to this presentation was a number that greatly exceeded communities and other communities where they've done similar work. And I think that's very exciting. And I hope that bodes well for the end result that we get here. It becomes a very good and solid document for which to work with as we develop the strategy going forward. Paul, do you have anything else?
Oh, thank you, Doug. Yeah, it's the response and positive reaction that we've received for this effort has just felt really good. It's been just a great gut check that we're doing what we need to do. It's a huge undertaking to readjust what has been happening historically with broadband infrastructure expansions in our communities. And as I mentioned previously, I mean, it's time for us to get really serious about collaborating to address these inequities and to position ourselves as a county with the right framework and infrastructure to provide that access. Again, it's affordable, and we're supporting our residents and students and seniors with the skills necessary to advance today and into tomorrow's future. So thank you to everyone for this effort.
Well, thanks for your time, both of you and all of our attendees today. I anticipate we will all be in frequent communication over the summer months. So I appreciate your time, and I hope everybody has a great week this week. Thank you.